Hello, my fellow escapists, and welcome to another war story / trip report. Today, we're going to be covering the DMT experience that I had years ago. The year was 2018. It was around spring, and I was at my friend Matt's house, who was the neighbor of another friend that I had named Ezra. My very first experience with edibles was also with Matt. He was always the dude to go to whenever you wanted to try something new. My friend Ezra was sleeping in the guest bedroom of Matt's house. I came over to hang out with them a lot, since we like to play video games and smoke a lot of weed. Prior to this experience, I had tripped on acid, mushrooms, and other things, but had gone nowhere near anything such as DMT or even ketamine. After a little while of sitting in the living room, Matt started explaining to me how he had got his hands on some DMT. I explained to him of how I knew about DMT prior, from a lot of videos I watched on YouTube about it. After realizing I was interested in those types of psychedelics, he offered me some. A white and tannish crystallized material was in a small cellophane wrapper, and he explained the route of usage to me. He was eager to let me try this shit, for free. Free is good, especially with this stuff, because I had yet to meet anybody who has gotten their hands on it. As he sprinkled a very minuscule amount of the substance onto a martini glass, I started getting the feeling of nervousness that one would get before their first time riding a roller coaster. I found it really weird that he was using a martini glass, but he enlightened me on the fact that he had nothing else in the house worth a while, and that the martini glass worked well. It's strange that a person that could get their hands on what seemed to me as a rarity doesn't own a glass pipe or anything like that. After the substance was secured in the martini glass, he put a little bit of aluminum foil around the top and stuck a hollowed out pin inside of it. Yes, a writing utensil. He called it the stem. A big part of me just wanted to back out of it all, since the nervousness was growing into anxiety. I held the flat piece at the bottom of the glass, as he held the lighter under it. Smoke began actively engulfing the glass beneath the foil. He explained to me how, if the lighter is too close to the substance against the glass, that it can burn a lot of it up, and you won't inhale as much as you need. So, to fix that, he sets the lighter offset just a little bit to the left of the substance. As he spoke, I began taking deep inhales through the pin. Soot began to build up around the glass where the lighter was contacting it, and I felt a burning sensation deep in my chest. I lifted my head up and exhaled throughout my nose and my mouth. The burning sensation did not subside, it only increased as I looked down at the glass, wondering what is to come. Anxiety quickly filled my body. My blood pressure must have been through the roof at this moment. With my mind racing, it was hard to listen to what Matt was trying to say. I got up and started pacing nervously, regretting that I had done this. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face before looking up at myself. As I stared at myself in the mirror, subtle ringing noise could be heard in the back of my mind. The sound seemed to be emitting from within. It grew noticeably louder before Matt got my attention. I went to sit down and he urged me to take another hit. He told me that I have to do it, or it won't work properly. That I'd have an unpleasantly long ride if I don't keep hitting it. He lights it, and I take another hit as my heart pounded in my chest. After a couple of small hits, my limbs seemingly began to dysfunction. I could no longer lift my arms. The ringing grew so loud that it coincided with a burning vibration that engulfed my body. The world around me broke apart to reveal the inner workings of reality, or so I thought. Numbers flashed before my eyes, and I couldn't differentiate when my eyes were open or closed anymore. My body, I could feel it fading into nothing. My racing thoughts were no longer racing with me, but running away from my consciousness. With all of my might, I fought this, grabbing onto every thought that I could. I felt who I am beginning to fade, as my own name began to seem foreign, and all the memories I had of that day were now a distant memory that only got further and further away into some type of black hole. It felt like I was in this state for far too long. All concept of time was out the window. There was no recollection of the life that existed prior to whatever place that I was in. The only thought that could be mustered was one of dread. I believed that I was truly dead. The physical aspect of this realm is that of great proportions. A spiraling ceiling looked as if it was light years away, but large enough for me to observe. I felt as if I was looking at something that no one has ever seen. Fighting to hold on to myself became exhausting in some strange way. Not physically draining, but as if another sense was being stretched and pulled. I stopped fighting and let whatever sense I was using to resist calm down. I was at this point consciousness, observing with no personality. I met a wall of what seemed to be made of indecipherable lettering. At this wall, I could move what looked like an arm made of some red webby material. I stretched it out far but didn't make contact with the wall, although I was planted up against it. It was like when you walk into a wall in a video game and still see your gun held out against it fully. It's hard to explain. Once I somehow broke past the wall, I was met by large wire-like tentacles that stretched out and then came back into its source. On each wire there were spikes. At the end of each spike was some form of light that connected to strange human-like bodies with no discernible features from my point of view. They all connected as a hive mind. It was as if I was seeing the inner workings of reality, what everyone truly was. When I made contact with a wire, pathways opened up that showed different stages of my past life and different scenarios that may or may not have happened. It was like my life was on a timeline and I finally broke out of whatever encased me. I stretched into one of the timelines and was met with a room. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know or think anything. I was a floating consciousness. I know now that it was Matt's living room, and I was moving around freely. No body, no physics, just visual. I saw someone laying on the couch with their back hunched over. It was me, but I didn't know that at the time. I could see Matt folding towels in the kitchen that connected to the living room. He was watching me from over the kitchen counter. Next thing I know, I'm back into the realm. It felt like I've been journeying for years. There were enormous webs of wires like before, but there were 3 different webs filled with them. A voice, for lack of a better word, spoke to me. It wasn't auditory though. It was something indescribable. A form of communication that doesn't really exist. It was the webs. They were filling me with positive thoughts. I felt as if I belonged here, that this is okay. This continued for what seemed like forever. On and on until I finally came to be. There I was, back awake with heavy limbs and a slight headache. Matt was eager to hear my thoughts, but I just stared out in awe. And he said, "Yep, sounds about right."